Hello, this is Sophie Lawson from sophielawson.com, and this is episode 173 of the Sophie Art podcast, which is a little podcast that I do about the art and things. And this one is an About The Tings episode, and I'm actually recording it in the middle of Saltram. I'm in my little sort of favourite place, my little hideaway place, where I like to go sunbathing. So I didn't plan to record this one outside today, but as I was walking down here, some things popped into my head, and I thought I really want to talk about those. So there is no lilDENNiS on this one, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get lilDENNiS in the future. What I'll do is later on I'll get lilDENNiS. So lilDENNiS is going to get us into this one. Bong! So lilDENNiS is here in spirit. But the things I'm going to talk about on this one is confrontation, bad habits. Confrontation and bad habits. So this one isn't about the things. It was going to be about aliens. I was actually going to talk about aliens on this one because I've got it all written out at home on my notes. And well, firstly, it's a beautiful day today, and I haven't been outside for ages. It's probably been about a month really since I was last outside. So the last few months I've just been cooped up inside, and I think I just needed to get out. So it shows me like how important it is to get outside, and it sort of goes into one of my things later about bad habits. But with the aliens, I can't really remember what I was going to talk about, but it was something. No, I can't really remember. So that might actually be it'll probably be next month. I'll talk about the aliens, but I had a really good little thing to talk about there. So what I'm thinking now is, I might actually change the schedule of the podcast a little bit. And at the moment, I do one About The Tings each month, and I have like 3 art things. I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change it to be 2 episodes a month about the art, and 2 episodes about the things, so I can talk about like spiritual things. So the first 2 weeks of each month I'll be looking at articles and things like that, and then the second 2 months I'm going to be doing these about the things. So one of them will definitely be aliens next month, and the other one we'll have to wait and see. So well, if you're watching on YouTube at youtube.com/Sophie Lawson, you're not really going to see much on this one. I've just got the camera sitting on top of my bag, and it's sort of looking at the top of the trees. So you might see, who knows actually, maybe you might see a little flying saucer. That'd be quite cool. Imagine that, if a little alien flew across the sky. I'd quite like that. But you might like see butterflies or something floating about. So this one's really more of an audio thing, and it's also going to be very much a brain dump. But I like these. This is why I like doing the About The Things ones. So the art podcasts are very structured. So they're very structured, and it's nice to have a bit of balance, I think. So these About The Things, I can just talk without thinking really. And I always feel like the best things come out when you haven't sort of planned what you're going to say. But that's what I do with the art ones as well. With the articles, even though they're planned, they're still very spontaneous, and I do feel like that's probably one of the best things. But I want to start with confrontation, but I feel like maybe bad habits is a better thing to start with. But what I noticed as I was thinking about this just a minute ago, I've sort of noticed that the two are linked. So the topic of confrontation I'm going to talk about is how I feel like we are in a world now where if you're standing up for truth, and if you're trying to live your life from like a place of love, I suppose, you've got to accept confrontation. And confrontation for me is probably one of my most fearful things. I was trying to think about something more scary to me than confrontation, and I can't think of anything. I feel like in confrontation, all of my fears are squeezed into the one thing. So that confrontation is about basically facing something negative and dealing with the consequences, normally it's to do with people. So a lot of confrontation, I think, is actually social. And I've talked about in the past, social anxiety, something I've had a lot of my life, and, well, I say I'm over it. I don't think you're ever actually going to get over it, but what happens is you become so aware of it that it doesn't control your life anymore. But the thing is with social anxiety, it's always there. Now the thing with confrontation is it sort of triggers my anxiety. Yeah, so in confrontation there's a lot of negative energy, potentially. There's a social anxiety, and what I've noticed is there's a level to this confrontation thing. Something I've talked about in the past on these podcasts is fear. When you're trying to face your fears, what you've got to do is you've got to get your head into a place where you are so mentally strong, I suppose, that your mindset is higher than the fear, and it's a numbers game. What we're dealing with here, I think we're inside of it's an entanglement. It's an entanglement of opposites. I think that's what we're inside of. It's like positive and negative. So what happens is when you're facing a fear, maximum fear is 100. At which point you would be your sort of courage would be 0 if fear is 100. But if fear comes down to say 50, your courage is 50. So it is literally a numbers game, which means if you practice your mindset, you can actually increase your mindset, and which will actually, if you can get your courage to 100, you're fearless. But what I've noticed is if you're not doing the things, which the last few months, because I've moved, I've dropped a lot of things, and I've actually brought into my life a lot of bad habits. And what I've noticed is, what that does is, it's taking for me, what it's done is it's lowered my courage, so that now confrontation and stuff is more of a fear thing. So that's what I noticed at the weekend. I'll talk about it in a minute. But because it's just a numbers game, it's brilliant, because it means you're completely in control. Because as long as you're levelling up your mindset, you can always overcome everything, which is brilliant. But it is a lot of work, and it's this balance thing. You're trying to do things in life, but you're trying to do things in life. Like, for instance, I'm trying to do my website and stuff, but there's only so much time, so you've got to try and work out what are you supposed to be doing, what is the best thing to be doing for like balance complete, and it's a very complicated thing. That's what I'm noticing. But what I've noticed is this confrontation thing is the reason I know it's social is if I'm in a situation where I'm one-on-one confrontation, I feel like that I'm fine with that. I feel like in that situation my courage must be higher than the fear. What happens is, let's say you introduce 5 people, and I'm now in a situation with confrontation with 5 people, even if the confrontation is identical to if it was one-on-one. In other words, let's say there's confrontation about, you could say, I'm trying to keep it, let's say the confrontation is about, what could it be? You've gone into a shop with dirty shoes on. Yeah, no, not really, because that's, let's say, what's a situation where there's confrontation? Yeah, the only thing I can think is my own experience, which at the moment is things like face masks and stuff. So let's say, I don't want to use that example though, let's do another one. I can't think of something. Confrontation. Here we go. Yeah, somebody's stolen a bit of your artwork. So somebody's stolen a bit of your artwork, and you've got to confront them to say, have you stolen my artwork? So one-on-one, I could face that person and say, have you stolen my artwork? And I would be able to handle that. Let's say there was 5 people and I had to go up to that person and say, have you stolen my artwork? I could probably still do it, but what would happen is it would be a lot more scary. let's say you put 10 people in there, you get to a point where there's a certain amount of people when I would say, I can't do it yet, I'll have to wait until they're on their own. So that's how I know that people is linked with confrontation. There's a bit of a social thing there. So again, what I need to do is I need to practice being in situations with lots of people and being okay with confrontation. Why am I talking about this? Well, at the weekend, I went out with people at work, and we went into this like little pub thing. So the first thing, because I don't wear face masks and stuff, when I went in there, I was a little bit. Well, there's so many things going on that night. There was the anxiety of being around people, because I'm still not 100% with that, especially because I haven't really been out much. Well, when was the last time I went out with lots of people? It was probably talking about a year ago or something. I tend not to go out because, for me, honestly, it doesn't interest me being in like a club or a pub or something. That's not really what. But the thing was, it was somebody's leaving do. So I wanted to go there just for that, to see that person, to sort of say bye. So I said yes to going out just to see that person. So because I don't wear a face mask and stuff, when we went in there, the first thing I was thinking, oh, here we go. And I was thinking, am I going to be brave enough to, because everyone else was wearing face masks. So again, this is a social thing. You're the odd one out. Yeah. So you're on the edge, but my truth is, I know my truth, so I have to live by it. So the first thing, so I didn't wear the face mask, and I got in, but the other one was you had to do this tracking thing. They do this thing where you have to sort of track if you go in. I don't know what it is, but there was an app for it, and I didn't have the app. So what I had to do was fill out a little piece of paper, and I didn't want to do it. But what happened was I couldn't, in that moment, I guess the fear was bigger than my courage, and I couldn't do it. So I actually filled out a little form, put my name and my number, and as soon as I did it, I regretted it. And what happened was I hadn't practiced. If I had been at home before practicing being in that situation, I could have rehearsed it, but because I didn't, I was thrown into it. I didn't, but this is the thing. So the first thing is I didn't practice that situation, so I wasn't prepared. Caught me off guard. But the main thing is, if I'd been on my own in that situation, I would have said, "Oh no, I don't fill out these forms," and they would have thrown me out, and I could have gone home. And I would have been proud of myself for standing up for my truth. But what happened was, because there was loads of people there, and everyone else had the app. So everyone else had filled it out. I thought, what was going through my mind was, well, I can't not fill it out, because then I'll make a scene. I'll probably get thrown out, because I've been thrown out of, when was it? About 3 months ago. I got thrown out of a cafe. It was me and my mum, and I wouldn't fill out the form, so I got thrown out. But again, because there was only like 2 of us, my courage was stronger than the fear. Also, back then I was doing my daily meditation. I haven't been doing my daily one. Last time I meditated was 3 days ago, but I've only meditated probably once every. Well, yeah, you're looking at probably once every 10 days at the minute. So I've got to improve that, because I really notice how important meditation is. What's amazing about meditation is, you don't realise how powerful it is until situations like this happen. Because what happens is, if you're meditating, when the situations happen like this, which is just part of life, you're prepared for it. Even though you haven't really done anything, somehow meditation just helps you sort of be prepared for life. It's quite strange. So that was what was going through my mind. But I also noticed there's like a limit to things I will say yes and no to. So, for instance, face masks, I know there is not a situation in the world. There could be 1 million people there, and they could say, if you don't wear this, I'm going to shoot you. I wouldn't do it, because it's my truth. Now at work, I wear a face shield, but as I talked about this on the first ever Face Masks and Freedom podcast. Again, it's this balance thing. You've got to, for me, face shield at work is acceptable. So I made that rule before all of this, but that the rule is, for me, face shield only at work. So it's only at work that I wear that. But again, I could look at that and say, well, that's because you're scared of confrontation. You're scared of confrontation at work. But then it also comes to this thing about, there's this thing, baby steps. You can't do well, actually, this goes into this week's inspirational quote. So this week's inspirational quote is, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. I made that up. I made that quote myself. I thought it was cool. But it sort of goes into this. So for instance, I can do anything. So I can, but I can't do everything. But you can do anything, but you can't do anything. You can't do everything straight away. So what that means is, the ultimate goal is to get to a point where I can be in confrontation in any situation and deal with it and live by my truth, I suppose. But so I can do that, but I can't do that yet until I've done these other things. This actually goes into my transition. So when I went from Kevin to Sophie, you can't overnight turn into to Sophie. You can't just transition overnight, but there will come a point where it will feel like you've sort of, overnight it will feel like you've done it, but you haven't. What's happened is you've done a load of little things. So for instance, I've talked about this before as well, like, firstly you start wearing nail polish, then you start wearing girls' clothes, and then before you know it, you're living as Sophie. It's the same thing. Like, I can't at the moment be in a massive confrontation and deal with it. So what I've got to do is I've got to put myself in little confrontations, build up the habit of that, and then so somehow what I need is really some sort of confrontation simulator. That'd be cool. Yeah. So what you could do is, like, level 1 would be a one-on-one confrontation, and then once you've rehearsed that and you can do that without even thinking about it, you would then move up to level 2 people. So the ultimate goal is you would get to the point where you could put it on the highest difficulty setting. You could have 1 million people, and you could be okay. You could live by your truth. So this is what this goes into, is because after that day I went home and I was really disappointed with myself, because I felt like I had let myself down by doing something that my heart didn't want to do. But the more I thought about it, I thought, well, hang on a minute. Firstly, you face the fear of going out in social situations, which is always out of my comfort zone. So I was proud of that. I didn't wear a face mask, and some of the people did look at me, because when I said I don't wear the face mask, some of the people did look at me. So you're very aware of that. So this is another thing as well. That already heightened my anxiety a bit, because people were looking at me, and I could tell they were thinking, well, why aren't you wearing a face mask, sort of thing. And then when you get, so it's very tricky, because every sort of situation isn't self-isolated. It's not like you can say, right, I'm not going to wear. You can't just practice, say, facing a confrontation, because you don't know what's going to have happened before that moment. So something might have happened before that which has put you on edge, which means that you're going into the confrontation at a lower level to start with. So you sort of realise how every sort of moment in life is actually linked to the next one. So all you can really do is your best. And at the weekend, my best was going into that social situation out of my comfort zone. My best was not wearing a face mask and sort of dealing with people looking at me. And then my best was filling out that form, accepting it. But like, what I'm going to do is, as I always say, you just learn from it all. So next time, what I'll do is I will practice that situation. And what will happen is, next time that happens, I will remember what it felt like to have done it when I didn't want to, and I'll say, no, I'm not doing that again. And then so hopefully, practice key to success. Yeah, but you've got to fail a few times, I suppose. But so somehow I've got to practice this. I've got to improve my skill of confrontation, which I feel like that has inside of it self-assertiveness, social anxiety, fear of failure, fear of ridicule. But when you look at it, a lot of it is all social. It's quite interesting, that is. So the other thing I was going to talk about is bad habits, which actually links in with this confrontation. So, well, what's some of the bad habits I got? This is amazing, actually, how, again, everything's linked. The food you're eating, your lifestyle, the amount of sleep you're getting, the things you're doing, the spiritual practices you're doing, your morning and night routines. It's amazing how everything's linked together. So, like I said, I haven't been meditating as much as I haven't been daily meditating for about 3 months now, and I've got to sort that out. My morning routines have been slightly compromised because what I've started doing is snoozing. So I've got to stop that bad habit of snoozing, because what happens is I snooze. When you snooze, you lose. So I snooze for about 2 times. I normally do it, about 18 minutes it is. But what happens then is I've compromised my affirmations in the morning. And so if you compromise your affirmations, you've already started the day compromised. Again, like what I said earlier, everything's linked to everything else. So I've got to start saying no to snoozing. That's the first thing. I haven't compromised my daily stretching. I still do my daily stretching. I still do my automatic writing, but even that has been a little bit compromised because I've noticed that I've actually stopped writing them up onto the computer. Because what I used to do was, when I was cooking my dinner, I would type up my handwritten affirmation, my daily affirmation, onto the computer, onto my little Kindle. But what's happened now is, because I've moved in with my mum, when I'm cooking dinner, I'm actually sitting with my mum. So again, like what I said about before in a podcast, with these habits, they're all interlinked. So what happened is, if you stop doing one thing, a lot of the other things are linked. You'll stop doing it. So what I've got to do now is I've got to build a bunch of new habits. So maybe what I've got to do is start saying, right, I'll write up my daily affirmations before I go to bed. But then I've got to also start going to bed earlier, because I've also been going to bed a bit later, so which knocks onto my sleep. And the reason for that is I want to spend a bit of time with my mum. So it's all sort of a bit complicated at the minute, because I've moved in with my mum. It's all of my habits and routines have gone weird, and I think what I need to do is get a piece of paper and write down and say, right, this is what I'm doing, and put it into times. Because at the minute, my focus is always, I come home from work, I go straight into either making a video or working on a website, and then once I've done that, then I go and have my dinner. But I spend a bit of time with my mum, because I've got to spend time with my mum as well. Again, it's this thing about you've only got so much time. So, yeah, I don't really know how to do it all. And I guess maybe I can't do everything. So some things have got to get dropped. But again, I feel like I can get a piece of paper and prioritise everything. So, like when I moved, that was about it ended up being about a 4 or 5 month process. It was a very stressful period, actually. And what happened was, a lot of things just didn't get done. The website, for instance, has got delayed again. This is mad. But I've just recently updated the blog, because next month, I said about last week, I'm going to be studying Procreate, which that is a priority. That's like a number one priority, is study and procreate. So, but linked in with that, I want to be putting a video onto the website. So I've sorted the blog out, which I did last week. Sorted the blog out so that I can actually embed the videos into the website. The good thing about that is, when I do the video, I won't really have to do much on the website. The video will sort of speak for itself, I suppose. So that's quite cool. But so what else is there? Practicing. What else are bad habits? Oh, eating. That's it. Again, I've started eating biscuits. And now I've got to take responsibility for this. But my mum loves biscuits, so I'm in a situation now where there's biscuits, and it's very hard to say no to biscuits. I know it's weird, but I find it quite hard. I love custard creams. They're my favourites, they are. So if I'm there with these custard creams, I've got to say no. So I've got to start practicing no. I've got to say no to biscuits, because if I start eating biscuits, I don't want to be eating biscuits all the time. And what happens is, again, you start eating biscuits, the next thing you know, you're eating cakes and chocolate, and so it all sort of snowballs out of control. I've got to say no to biscuits. I've got to say no to snoozing. And it's quite incredible. It's only little things. You would think, well, you're only eating a biscuit, what harm is it? But it's amazing how that little thing actually becomes a much bigger thing. Because what you're doing is, what I think, you're saying to yourself, I'm okay with these bad habits. But then I also think, is there anything really wrong with eating biscuits? There isn't, as long as you're balancing it. So what I've said, as I was thinking about this, I thought, right, Saturday, what I do is Saturday night, Sunday is the only day I don't have my day job. So Saturday night I like to watch a film or something. And I thought, right, what I'm going to do is, Saturday night is the only day where I will let myself eat biscuits. So that's the way I'm going to do it. See how that feels. I love ice cream. I said about that on the podcast. Ice cream's one of my favourites. But I've started eating so much more ice cream because we're doing a monthly shop now. So there's a lot of ice cream in there. I guess what I'm noticing is, I'm struggling with saying no when the things are around me. So when I lived on my own, there was never any biscuits around because I didn't buy them. So if there's no biscuits, you can't eat biscuits. So it's not my responsibility to stop my mum eating biscuits, because if she loves biscuits, she should be allowed to eat them. So I've got to learn the skill of not eating biscuits. I've got to learn the skill of saying no when the things are around me. Which that is one of the hardest things, because it's like an alcoholic trying to stop drinking alcohol when he's in the pub. The alcoholic, he or she is in a pub and surrounded by people drinking. You're increasing, the probability of you stopping drinking in that situation is much, much lower than if you take yourself out of that environment and but then what'll happen then is, take yourself out of that environment, level your skills up so you're not drinking alcohol. I'm convinced you could go back into that pub, be surrounded by all these people, but because you've levelled yourself up, you're not going to be tempted by the alcohol. It's the same thing with these biscuits. So what I've got to do, I've got to somehow, maybe what I could say to my mum is, can we hide the biscuits? Put them in the cupboard or something. I don't know. It's a strange one, but somehow I've got to practice. So it's hard. It's quite hard because biscuits are nice. So you sort of think to yourself, well, is it really that bad to eat the biscuits? But it is, because of what it leads to. Yeah, it's quite interesting. What other bad habits have I got at a minute? So I've got these biscuits, too much ice cream. Also, chips. I've started eating chips again. I ain't had chips for ages. So for me, a lot of it is food. Starting to eat like what I would consider more negative food. So I've got to take control of that and start, because I was living off rice for years, and yeah, I haven't been eating as much rice. So what I've got to do is maybe I say, you can have chips, Mum, but I'm having rice. That might be quite cool, actually. So again, it's this thing of it, even that in a weird way is some sort of social thing, because if you're around somebody eating biscuits, there's a little bit of a social pressure to eat biscuits as well, especially when your mum comes in with a plate of biscuits. Says, "Here, I got these for you." So it's quite tricky, but I feel like this is actually quite amazing, because if you can overcome it in that situation, you're going to have a much. Because in other words, you could go out. It's like what they say about these monks. These monks go off into the middle of the woods and become the most peaceful beings on the earth, but are they really that peaceful? Are they not tricking themselves, pretending they're peaceful? If they were in around people, like with the daily life struggles and stuff, would they actually be as peaceful as they are in the middle of nowhere? Because I feel like if anyone went into the middle of nowhere, we would all become peaceful beings. So the best type of peaceful being is somebody who is in the middle of absolute chaos and is still peaceful. And the only way you can know if that is where you're at is to be in that situation. So that monk that's in the middle of nowhere, peaceful, he needs to go into a stressful environment and let's see how peaceful he really is. That's what I think. So it's almost like the best type of training is sort of on the job. And this is where the failure is going to come, because you're not going to be able to be 100% peaceful when you're in an environment like that. So that's where you're going to have to practice it. And what I've noticed is you have to go home, you have to basically analyse what's happened. So what I did was I went home and I analysed it and said, I'm really disappointed that I filled out that form, but in that moment it was the best I could do. Next time I'm going to remember this and I'm going to try to do better, try to be more truthful. So now the monk, let's say the monk was doing that, the monk might have been in the middle of nowhere and he would have thought to himself, I can handle confrontation, but when he was put into that situation, maybe he couldn't. So until you actually practice the things you're doing, you're not going to know if you can actually do it. What else? I think that's it, really. That's where I'm at the moment. Yeah, I feel like a lot of it is to do with writing. I've got to write out about all the things I want to do and prioritise them. I've got to write out the things I don't want to be doing and come up with ways to practice the things I want to do and the things that I don't want to be doing. That's basically it for this one. I hope you enjoyed that. And all that's left is this week's little inspirational quote. I just wanted to say something. This is amazing. A little bird flying around with a cool sound. But I'm listening to this podcast called Healing the Troubled Child. I think that's what it's called. Healing the Troubled Child Within. And I'll put a link and everything in the description. I'm just listening to it, but listen to this for an amazing quote. Well, I'm lying here sort of sunbathing, meditating at the same time. This is brilliant. Listen to this. I think this is the right bit.
By refusing to look at your pain, you're making yourself incapable of helping others.
No, he says it better in a minute. Listen to this.
I think he said it though, but not necessarily in those words. Yes, that's true. If you refuse to look at your pain, you're causing others pain.
I think that's amazing. I almost want to make that this week's inspirational quote. I think I will. That's this week's inspirational quote. I'll play it again. Play it again, Sam. But it goes to this I can't remember his name. It's a monk called Admiral something. How cool is this? I'm interrupting an interruption. But I've just looked up his name, and he's called Venerable Thupten Phuntsok. It's Venerable, Thupten, and then Phuntsok. He's a monk. He's cool. He's got a beautiful little voice. I've had a quote from him before. He said the quote: "When you rush, you delay. When you speed up, when you slow down, that's when you speed up." I actually said that wrong last week on the podcast. That's one of my all-time favourite quotes. I think this is another one. This is amazing, this quote is. So this week's little inspirational quote. Oh, I wanted to say something else as well. So I'm lying here, sunbathing. What I've noticed is if you just stay still, after about 5 or 10 minutes, all the little insects will start crawling all over you. Whereas if I was sat here and I was moving around, they wouldn't. And I've noticed something like that before. If you're in the middle of the woods and you're just sitting there, all the birds will, when you get there, the birds will fly away. They're sort of like scared of you. After about 10 minutes or something, the birds will trust you. It's almost like you become part of the woods. How cool is that? And the same thing's happening here with these little insects. It's like, because I'm so still, it's like they see me now as just part of the ground, crawling all over me. It's quite cool. This week's little inspirational quote, listen to this.
I think he said it though, but not necessarily in those words.
Not that, that's not it.
Yes, that's true.
This one.
If you refuse to look at your pain, you're causing others pain.